Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast. Today on the podcast, we welcome Callum Faint, Chief Fire Officer of Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service right here in the UK. We cover lots of areas in today's episode, as well as how he and his service have navigated the COVID-19 pandemic in an area of the UK that was really badly affected. Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service are also recruiting right now. And in today's episode, you're going to get inside information on the community-minded people they are looking to recruit. Callum shares his passion to put positivity and pride back into the service and how his leadership style is guiding this every day. Now, it's not all been smooth sailing for Callum either, and he's going to share really openly how he once faced a position where he was told he couldn't have the career he dreamed about since he was a kid. There's some really good takeaways from today's episode, so if you're looking to get a job in the fire service, make sure you've got a pen and paper ready. Once again, we are sponsored by the fantastic William Wood Watches. Head over to williamwoodwatches.com and check out these beautiful watches that are made from 100% recycled fire service equipment. This is hoses, helmets that have served a minimum 10 years operationally in the UK, and you can carry the spirit of the fire service with you right there on your wrist. Head over to williamwoodwatches.com. Thank you so much for taking time to come back to the Firefighters Podcast. We hope you enjoy every single episode. Let's head in there with Callum Faint, and I'll see you on the other side. Callum Faint, welcome to the Firefighters Podcast. How you doing, boss?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for coming on. I wanted to have you on because you have come into your role only very recently. So you're a fire officer in the UK, Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service, and unlike many other fire officers I've spoken with, you've sort of come straight into your role in the midst of like wartime, if you will. You haven't had sort of your role in peacetime. So what's happening right now? What's the UK Fire Service facing?
Yeah, what isn't it facing, I suppose, is the honest answer. I'll speak a little bit about Leicestershire because Leicestershire is slightly unique to the rest of the country at the moment. Obviously, the COVID pandemic is out there. It's been out there for what feels like about 10 years, but in realistics about 9-10 months. No. Leicestershire, or Leicester specifically, hasn't really had a break in COVID because of the national lockdown, and then we stayed in lockdown restrictions, and we're now in the midst of the second wave. It's fatiguing, and the Fire and Rescue Service is fatigued as part of it. We've stepped forward brilliantly as an organisation. I couldn't be happier, if I'm brutally honest. We've done what the public's needed, but it's not been easy, and it's really not easy at the moment. I think we'll probably talk about it a little bit later, but our sickness levels went through the roof literally 2 or 3 weeks ago.
I read somewhere you've had like 100 staff off at one point in time. How many have you got in total?
So between 650, 675 staff across the board. So that's
like a sixth of your staff?
Yeah.
Wow. Is that a combination of operational and frontline?
So that was everyone out of the organisation for every reason. So that wasn't only COVID related. Okay. So people who are long-term sick on modified duties, both from operational, professional support side. But the main driver in that, and probably 60-70% of that, were people either confirmed with COVID, but more majority-wise, it was the impact of track and trace and self-isolating.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a roving problem, because if you get contacted from track and trace, it's 2 weeks, but then you come back, hopefully, as long as you don't develop symptoms. So it's a 2-week period where actually, you know what, it was getting really, really quite serious. Really happy to say the organisation and the people in the organisation kind of stepped up. Fire engines didn't come off the run.
No.
On call still turned out. We functioned on the officer cadre. Really good, but it's concerning, and it's that constant juggle of actually the community needs to see us. We need to be out there. Yes. We need to be supporting them. This is we're probably not going to. Hopefully, we never feel anything like this again as a nation.
Yeah.
And it's a real opportunity for the service to kind of step forward and say, look what we do, as well as fires, as well as rescues, as well as community safety. Look what else we're trying to do to help. And we've done that, and I couldn't be prouder. I sat in front of the Her Majesty's Inspectorate, virtually, of course, to talk about COVID. And I've got a folder of about 18 pages of activities and efforts that we've done to kind of really fill the gaps where other agencies haven't been able to, can't, whatever it may be. So don't get me wrong, you're right. I've come into the Chiefs role at a really testing time.
Yeah.
But at every testing time, there's an opportunity to shine.
Absolutely.
That rhymes, but I didn't mean to.
Absolutely. There's a soundbite right in there.
And it's almost, let's find the opportunity then to be as great as we can be. And I couldn't be prouder at the moment. I sit here, yes, I'm tired, yes, I'm fatigued.
Yeah.
But actually, I look over my shoulder and there's a whole organisation behind me of people who actually are saying, oh, can we do this? Can we do that?
Being resourceful, being that master problem solver, which is exactly what I see when I look at members of the fire service.
And what a happy problem that is for me to have to say no, rather than to try and get behind people and create inertia or create momentum.
Yeah.
Actually...
Yeah, because when we're in softer times, it's harder to continually encourage. So we into business terminology and stuff like that, engagement for one, but also creativity. How can we do it better? How can we do it differently? And there's always that mindset. Certainly, if we look back 10, 20 years in the fire service, it's always done that way. But when something becomes a necessity, like we have to change, this is forced. So many efficiencies, but there will be so many benefits that come out of this as well.
Yep.
Both from distance when working and stuff like that. I wanted to ask you about many members of the public that listen to this will think they have got a certain level of information, but where does the fire service get their guidance from, if you will? Because obviously we're kind of the other side of the public domain. We have privileged access to certain information for everyone's best intentions, but where does your guidance come from in terms of how long we have off and people like that? How do we get that guidance?
Yeah, taking a bit of a meandering journey, if I can do this one. So as you'd expect, as a decent organisation that plans for the future, we're heavily embedded in the Local Resilience Forum, and we've got a load of legal responsibilities under the Civil Contingencies Act to prepare for foreseeable emergencies. So we had, as probably every service had, pandemic flu plans in place, and that was the basis for what we would look to respond, the model that we'd look to respond to.
To this level, though? I mean...
No. So no, this was a pandemic flu plan, so a large-scale outbreak of flu. Very quickly, it became evident that plan wasn't correct for what we were facing at the time, as plans never are. They're a great place to start, but I think the military use a phrase that... no plan survives first contact with the enemy.
Yeah, it's the old Mike Tyson. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah,
and that's when it goes out the window. Right now, we're improvise, adapt.
So, truthfully, the first sort of 2 or 3 months, that's exactly what we were doing, and the fire service does that really well. We're trained, we're drilled into improvise, adapt, overcome. That's not working. What can we change? And I think certainly in the first 2 or 3 months, the country was in that place where actually, what notification did we, what guidance did we get? The honest answer is we heard most of the announcements when they were live on BBC.
Really?
When Boris.
Wow.
And it's that right, we've got to respond really quickly because our staff will ask the questions, quite rightly so.
Yeah.
But we were hearing it majority of the time, real time. I think there's only one time I had advance notification that Oadby and Wigston would go into lockdown.
Okay.
And that's the one time we had information up front. So truthfully, we follow the vast majority of the guidance that Public Health England, NHS produce. We look on the gov.website.
That'll be astonishing for people to hear that. And that's not to worry people. Obviously, you have all these plans in place, but you really are having to, react
real time.
Yeah.
Real time. And like I say, we're trained to do that, which is really good. But people always have the conspiracy theory, oh, you must have known this days before. We really haven't. We've been hearing it via BBC. Certainly, obviously, the CSR, the Comprehensive Spending Review, was yesterday. We haven't had any particular intel of what that would or wouldn't look like, in fairness to the Treasurer. Rishi Sunak.
Yes, gentleman's name,
He's probably got bigger fish to fry than the fire service, but obviously I live and breathe the fire service.
Exactly. There's one of those things. It needs to be, and you have an organisation full of people, and it's not even like we've flown into this period of time after. You were in the midst of, and I know a lot of the UK fire services are in the midst of Her Majesty's Inspectorate, and there was lots of processes being reviewed. I mean, even just the past 10, 15 years, we've been looking at pensions and costings. Our role in the communities has changed. How have you managed to keep that a priority in thinking, what are we going to do when people talk about the new normal?
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? How are we going to focus back in on the priorities?
And I suppose that's the most challenging factor in all of COVID that I've found is the human dynamic. That your appetite for risk compared to my appetite for risk will be completely different, and that will be across all 675 people in the organisation. Some will have some really delicate home situations where they will be massively risk adverse for all the right reasons, and everyone will have a different level of that. And to kind of say, okay, we need to get back out in the community, we need to carry on doing home fire safety checks, we need to do these things, will land differently with everyone else, with everyone differently. And that's the balancing act. That is the really fine balancing act. We've tried to maintain as much communication as we can do. So we've done vlogs pretty much on a weekly basis.
Yes.
We're shifting that a little bit now because that's very much myself or the senior team talking at the organisation, trying to get a bit more two-way comms going now of what's your opinion, how do you feel, come back to us with what you want. But ultimately, we're going to have to make some decisions, or have made some decisions that aren't popular. We've looked to continue to do fire protection activities because we still need to. Buildings will still catch fire. Businesses, they're under the cosh at the moment, and they'll be cutting some corners. And fire protection might be one of the ones that they cut. I'm not suggesting they have, but
of course,
so it's that real fine balancing act of actually we are still a fire and rescue service, and I get COVID's going on, and I get people are affected, some really badly, and I have the deepest sympathies for those. But we're still a fire and rescue service, and we've still got our requirement. That's what we're here for.
And to look at it on its very basic level, I spoke with an operational crew the other day, and we used the analogy of a house fire in a row of houses. Do you know what I mean? One person's just lost their home, and they're in absolute turmoil. Right, okay, but the other 4 or 5 are next in line, and we need to cut the limb off at a certain point to the needs of the many must outweigh the needs of few. There's a lot of people struggling out there, but and this is what I think is so unique about your role, but fire services across the world, you have a legal obligation. We of course we sympathise with any business out there, but to a certain extent, if something's not working and the cost outweighs the benefit, then the companies have closed, and that's very sad to see. Not that that's a privilege, but you don't have that privilege. You must find a way to carry on, and this is where I see those moments of leadership being so crucial. Because you must make it. You cannot go, if you get, like you say, you've got BBC News on Saturday or whatever, you can't go something to deal with on Monday. I have operational feet on the ground right now. What are we doing about this? So how have you found those decisions? It's the legal side of it. You can't not make these decisions.
And I think the other bit that does weigh on my mind and factors into this of actually the public or the community are in a place of turmoil at the moment, in a massive disruption. The amount of solace and comfort that the public will see by seeing fire engines on the road, by seeing firefighters out and about, it's almost a reassurance, a hearts and minds thing as well as the legislative function. And actually, I think we underestimate just how powerful the fire service is amongst the community.
Yes, definitely.
The fact of the matter is, yes, we have to continue with the legal functionality. That's quite an easy decision for me because actually I'm mandated to do that by law and the fire authority will hold me to account. I think it's the more difficult ones or the more areas we've had to focus on is the non-legislative stuff. So a home fire safety check, actually we save more lives by not going to fires than we do by going to fires.
Preventative work.
So, but we haven't got necessarily a legal... I haven't got a statutory duty to conduct home fire safety checks. It's the right thing to do, and it kind of comes back, and we rely quite heavily on our mantra of if it's safer people, safer places.
100%.
Then let's do it. Yes, we've got to be conscious, and this is always the balancing act, and this is where I think the chief's job is described perfectly. There is no black and white. It's just what shade of grey are we operating in today, or this hour even, because it all changes. Balancing, yes, we should help our community. Yes, we should be visible. Yes, we should be out there doing the home fire safety checks, making our community safer in a non-emergency environment. But I have to make sure we've got crews that are fit and well to respond to emergencies.
Shoulds and the musts. Yeah.
So it's the right processes, the right protection measures, the right things to safeguard the ability to respond while still balancing the right thing to do for our community.
Yeah.
And that will change. It will just change on a daily or an hourly basis, whatever the next announcement is for government. New guidance. We talked about guidance earlier. In the early stages, it was really easy because there wasn't any. No. So we did what we felt was right. Now you've got about 50 million pieces of guidance, all conflicting against each other. And it's right, how do you steer things through? And how do you explain yourselves to the organisation? Because things change, but organisation, to getting communication out in the organisation takes a while.
You alluded to it before about that numbing effect as well, because like you say, when anything hits, it's the initial, everyone wakes up, that kind of strikes that fight or flight syndrome in us, and we wake up, we switch on, the adrenaline surges, okay, I'm paying attention now. But when it's every day, and when you start to layer it, as you referenced to there, it's very difficult to keep it a priority. Keep the important things the important thing. It's not because nobody cares, but we do become numb to it in a world of volume and social media and panic and frustration and mental health. How do we cut through the noise of that to keep that clarity? Because that's ultimately what a fire service job is.
Yep. Yeah, great question. One I haven't got an answer to. I'll tell you what I've had a go at and what's worked and what hasn't worked. And I think probably every chief you speak to will give you the same of, yeah, we thought this might be around for 3 to 6 months. And I think that was, in the early days, that was probably an optimistic outcome, that it might last a bit shorter, hopefully. And obviously here we are 9-10 months in, probably with at least another 3 to 4 until the vaccine takes any effect. How do you keep the focus? It's been difficult, and I think this isn't don't get the violin out for me or anything like that, but for some parts of the organisation, actually COVID has been a bit of a break, a bit of fresh air of actually we can stop, we can catch up with stuff. For myself and the senior team, that's not the case. We've been running at 100 miles an hour for the last 9 to 10 months, and that's been difficult. Thankfully, we've got quite a good, energetic team here that's happy to share the love, share the workload, take the strain. That's key. I think if you tried to do it all yourself for this time, you would have done yourself a bit of a mischief. And this is where we're coming back to one of your earlier points, the Chiefs network. Thank God for them, because if it wasn't for them, I'd be very close to the edge, I would imagine. Weekly calls with the regional chiefs where we can kind of sense check what we're doing. How have you interpreted that? What have you done? Interestingly, we have the head of the ambulance service on that call as well. And if we think we've got it tough, I think we need to look over at that gentleman. And
crikey,
think, wow.
Because even way before this, they're always up. They're like, I often see them as trying to just get their head above water long enough to grasp, and then they're back under.
And you kind of say to them, oh yeah, we've got 20, 30, 35 fire engines available, and so I've got one ambulance for 20 minutes. Over a stretch of hundreds and hundreds of miles, perhaps sometimes. So we're finding ourselves now, and you're getting these things coming at you 1,000 miles an hour. But I want to cast our minds back, because you joined in 95. September 95.
September 95. I mean, I don't know if you ever saw yourself in a chief fire officer's role, but take us back to why did you get yourself into this? And
I'm one of the London's burning generation, if
How
I'm
wonderful.
honest. So I think probably from about the age of 11 or 12, I started having an interest in the fire service. Probably did stem from London's burning, if I'm honest, which is not a true reflection of what a fire and rescue service does, but it shows aspects of it. Kind of fell in love with the job, if I'm honest. Did a couple of work experience. So I come from the London Fire Brigade, Hertfordshire Fire Brigade sort of border. I was brought up in Hertfordshire, so those are my fire and rescue services. I did some work experience with both of them, absolutely loved it.
When you were still in school, so
yes,
16, 17 sort of age. What work experience did you do?
I did a week with Hertfordshire Fire and Rescue Service at their training school, which was brilliant, just doing kind of almost fire cadet stuff now.
Yeah, I was going to say, because the cadet programs are huge these days, and you were kind of already doing that, I suppose, back then.
I mean, that was before the days of cadets, but essentially that's how a cadet program is built,
What did you get a chance to do?
Bespoke course for 16 of us, something like that.
Fantastic.
And we did the fireground drills, we squirted water, we didn't cut any people out of cars or anything, but
understandable.
They let us wear BA.
Really?
It was back in the days when health and safety was a little bit less
right back then. What was the first service you joined?
At Cambridgeshire. So I was lucky enough, just in my run up to my 18th birthday, I saw that Cambridgeshire were recruiting, put an application in, went through the recruitment process whilst I was 17, and lucky enough the start date of the course was September, and I turned 18 in the August. So I literally went straight from...
The first time?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we've had a number of people on the podcast recently. One of them took 10 years to get in. We had American Firefighter, 21 applications he'd put in. And so, like you say, it really is the luck of the draw sometimes. But
I disagree. I think sometimes you make your own luck. An effort that I'd put in to get the work experience, how I could talk about that, it kind of showed that actually I wasn't just doing it because I wanted to do it. I'd done it because I'd done my research. I'd put the effort in.
I will absolutely agree. Often people will say to me, "Oh, you have a lucky situation." No, you put yourself in a lucky situation. Yep. You stood around at the fire station for long enough until you got that nugget, that one piece of information that just fell out of a conversation, and you went, "Wow, okay, so that's that and that's that," and these all become reference points that accumulate.
And some of it's right time, right place. Don't get me wrong, but if you exploit your opportunities where you can. I think you can give yourself, whether it's an extra point, an extra 2 points out of the process when they think, oh wow, look, they're not just talking the talk in front of me, they've got evidence to show that they've put themselves out there. Well, let's take a punt on that person. So
I think sometimes if people can't see an outcome immediately, they don't see it. But unfortunately, like you say, it's nice to be ready for an opportunity before you get the opportunity, rather than there'll be people who get opportunities and they find themselves scrambling to be prepared for it because it wasn't truly something they were invested in. You know, you've been looking into this even when you were in school before you even heard of anywhere to apply to. So you joined at 18. How was your basic training?
Tough.
Tough.
So I was a very wet behind the ears 18-year-old. I'm very lucky. I had quite a nice and privileged upbringing. My family were really supportive. I hadn't really lived, if I'm honest. So 18-year-old, off I go. I did my training down in Surrey because that's where we went to do the training. 12 weeks of growing up quite quickly. I got to say, I was never bullied. I was never mistreated. I had none of that stuff. All that stuff that you'd commonly place with the fire service maybe in that times. I didn't see or witness any of that. And to be perfectly honest, I was probably, if it was going to happen, I was probably the prime candidate for it to happen too, being young and naive.
Oh, being young and naive. Was the different ages still in those? Because I know now we have a very diverse age range that we employ all across the fire service, but... Yeah,
probably less diverse. I think then the age range was still there between 18 and 31, I think it might have been at the time. But a broad range of people, different spectrum. But tough, but loved it. I then finished that and was posted to Cambridge Fire Station, which... if you could have picked a fire station, that was the one for me. Big old fire station, big watches, busy.
Fantastic.
I think at the time they were doing between 3,500 and 4,000 calls a year.
Really? That is strong.
Really busy, really good. Big watch. Was lucky to join a watch that had a really good ethic, and I think that's kind of installed in me as I've gone through the fire service, and that was work hard, play hard.
Okay.
By all means, have a great game afterwards, but once the work's done, you've got to get the work done first.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it.
How long were you there for?
Well, this is going to get complicated quite quickly.
Okay.
I was there for about 3.5 years, and then I suffered a seizure. So I had a full-blown unconscious, convulsing. Went for various tests, and it turns out I had epilepsy.
Wow.
So at the time, equality and inclusion laws weren't quite as friendly as they are now. So I was dismissed. Well, I was ill health retired, to be perfectly honest.
So what, 21, 22?
Yeah, just over 21.
Wow.
Ill
that
health
must
retired.
have been such a blow.
It came very close to breaking me, if I'm brutally honest. It's a job I loved from a very young age. I got to do it. Not only did it meet my expectations, it surpassed them. I was as happy as a pig in mud. And it was just ripped away from me. And don't get me wrong, I understand.
Yes, of course, but it still doesn't help that, does it? What support mechanism did you have then? Because that's a big blow for anybody. But
so my watch, my watchman were real allies at that time. I was living away from home. I was living in Cambridge, as you'd expect, working there, and it just ripped away. But they, as watches invariably do, there's a lot of bad talk about watch culture. Some of the watch culture, you can't buy it for any price, and that was one of those things where they looked after me, they supported me, they kept me in a social loop, kept me involved. I licked my wounds for a little bit of what am I going to do. I wasn't. Was there any way to navigate back from that? Did you see a way back in? No, not at the time. So at the time, the rules were epilepsy was an absolute bar to the fire service. I fought as hard as I could with the doctors around how have you reached a diagnosis, why have you reached that, that's not fair.
You never experienced a fit before?
I'd have 2 seizures in my life. One was shortly after I joined the service, and that was put down as one of those things. Everyone's allowed one free fit in life. The second one was no, there's a trend there, so it's categorically epilepsy. But I wasn't ready to let the fire service go. I couldn't see myself leaving the fire service and going to another career. Couldn't do it. So frankly, I just became a pain in the arse for the service to kind of show my commitment, show what I wanted to do. At the time, they were recruiting for control operators.
Oh, wonderful.
So I put my hat in the ring for that. I could never quite get my head around how I couldn't be on a fire engine, but I could be in a control room controlling 50 odd of them. But
we've had control operators on here before, and what I hear when I hear you say that is you were so committed to your why, you were happy to try anyhow. Do you know what I mean? Yep. Your purpose was helping people, and there's lots of ways to do that. And it's been such an eye-opener for me. We've had so many different elements of the fire service on here that it's such a family, and there's so many ways for people, even no matter their physical or mental challenges, to contribute to it. So you pursued a career in control then? Yeah.
And I hands up, wasn't very good at it. I gave it a good go.
Did you have to pass the typing test?
I had to do all the tests, yeah. So
it seems obvious when I think about it, but I never even thought that they would obviously have to do that.
Because I'd been ill health retired or dismissed. I was applying for a job as was anyone from the street. So
straight back in the public.
Don't get me wrong, I understood radios and radio procedures and bits and pieces, but the typing, the computer system, it was all new to me. So I spent just over 3 years, 1 month and 2 days in control.
Okay.
Lovely. And I've got to say, toughest night shifts I've ever done in my life were in control. Whether it be busy or whether it be quiet, it's just such a mentally taxing job. And time can pass in an instant in a control room, or it can drag for decades in a control room. It's a really difficult environment. They call it the room of unfinished conversations, because you never get to finish a single conversation because a phone rings, a radio goes.
I love that. I've never heard that before.
But it's frustrating for me when people kind of, well, what do control do? All they do is answer the radio. Oh, go and spend a busy shift with them, not a quiet shift, or don't go up on Sunday
there for 5 minutes.
Lunchtime.
Yeah, didn't look like they're doing anything.
Incredibly talented people, talented work, but it didn't. And I don't mean this disrespectfully. It didn't float my boat. It wasn't where I wanted to be. It was a means to an end for me. So in terms
of your development, though, what do you think your big takeaway from that was?
Massive.
Yeah.
So you talk about being distant from an instance, standing back, taking stock,
holistic view of
wider.
What's happening. Yeah.
There were so many opportunities in control. I didn't see them all at the time.
Yeah.
But there was so, and it really helped to develop me. Really did. But I didn't want to accept it at the time, so I didn't fully embrace myself.
Okay.
The laws changed. I was able to get a pretty decent statement from one of my doctors around the likelihood of me not having another seizure.
Okay.
The law changed. I went back to the service and said, look, couldn't you have a look at this? They said no. And then a friend and a Firefighters union rep gave me a bit of paper one day that said, Scotland have done it. So I took that paper and I went running up. I didn't run up into the chief's office, but I did go to see the PA and said, could you show that to the chief?
Apples? Come on.
And about 2 weeks later, they offered me a return to operational duties.
What was it when you found that letter or that email? What was that like?
That wasn't the trigger for me, because they could still say no.
Yeah. Until you've got boots. Until you're standing on parade, first day back.
It was a moment. I went to see the director of business support, Cheryl Rolfe. She used to be a control operator. She's from a fire service background, and she kind of sat me down and put the contract in front of me, and I had to ask for 10 minutes to be in a room by myself. It reduced me to tears, if I'm honest. And it was just all the fight, all the anger, all the frustration, all the effort was worth it.
Yeah.
And for her to be able to kind of say, I'm so happy to be able to do this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because as well, like you say, when you see it in somebody and you know they've got such value and they're just not quite hitting it. I see this with people that go for recruitment multiple times, and you don't want to say you're not doing it right. Just keep going. It's just a pivot. Yep. You're literally an inch off, and for you it was one piece of paper.
Yep.
You're one piece of just keep. But some people just can't. And like you say, when it hits you, I had it. After applying several times, it just hits you like a wave. And that flood of emotion, you think, it's just. I remember when I was with my wife when I got my email, and I thought, I just can't, It just did me. And I thought, gee, I'm actually going to do it. So you were back in. On the boots, on the ground, on the fire engines.
Well, I didn't go straight back.
You must have been pinching yourself.
I had to, the DO, divisional officer at the time, said, no, you've got to go back to training school to do that again.
Long time out.
And it was kind of like, okay. But
training school's fun, though. How was it the second time around?
It was really easy.
Oh, really?
A ladder doesn't change, your pump doesn't change, hose doesn't change. You could kind of do it all.
Did you take more from it the second time, though?
I enjoyed
it wasn't the first time.
I took the atmosphere in, and dare I even say, whilst I didn't know what coaching and mentoring was at the time, I naturally had experience to talk people through it and help people through it and talk about real world. So I really enjoyed it second time. And
wonderful.
Whilst I moaned about the DO at the time, actually, what an opportunity! Quite a nice thing to do. No pressure, really.
No, absolutely.
Got back on the run, got back to Cambridge Fire Station, different watch, but that helped me towards the end, actually, of a different watch. It took all the fear away around moving stations, moving watches, different things. Got back to Cambridge and just absolutely loved it again.
Yeah.
I stayed there, I think, as a firefighter for about 12, 18 months.
Okay.
And then I kind of found myself getting a little bit bored at times, and boredom leads to either mischief or creativity, doesn't it?
It does. The devil makes work for idle hands and all that.
And I didn't want to be the mischievous person. I didn't want to become a pain in the neck for the service. They'd helped me, and I felt I owed them for that. So I started to go for promotion at that point. Don't get me wrong, when I was a new firefighter, as it was in those days, you did your leading firefighters and subs exams. So I had most of the qualifications. And then started progressing through the ranks. Did I ever see myself as a chief? No. My career aspiration when I joined, hark back to London's burning here, was to be a rider station officer.
Rider station
That's
officer.
what I wanted to achieve in my career. Yeah. And I did it for 6 weeks because Cambridge had a rider station officer.
Really?
So I had a
surely.
6 weeks temporary stint doing that.
Wow.
And then that rank disappeared as we moved over from rank to role.
How did you find that first step from firefighter to sort of crew commander or crew manager or leading fire officer as it was then? Because I feel like that's the biggest and most challenging one, perhaps.
I didn't find that. I found the biggest one, the most difficult one between watch manager and station manager. So coming away from the trucks, that's the one that I found the hardest. Mm-hmm. I think with crew managers, you get to see them operate. When you're in the back of a fire engine or driving or whatever it may be, you get to see them operate. You get a good template of what good looks like.
They're still leading by example,
like.
And it's authentic because you see the struggle, you see them get their hands dirty, or you see them in the watch room late at night doing that. But like you say, you're busy away as a station commander or a station officer, but they don't see that all the time, I suppose.
And you're by yourself a lot more, and you're questioning yourself about, is this right, is this wrong? Yeah. There's a real perception difference as well around you're not one of the watch anymore, you're one of them. Yeah. Which
and if you get a win, you don't get a team win. Of course, everything is a team win, but there's nobody to go, hey, guys, girls, that was awesome, this was great. Do you know what I mean? It was just, I've got a great email, I'm sat here by myself in the office.
Yeah.
That can be really challenging.
Myself,
high five, yeah.
And you get the grief whichever way it goes. You get grief coming up, you get grief coming down. You're the meat in that sandwich, and sometimes it can feel a difficult place, and you quite often don't know if you're doing it right or wrong.
Okay.
So that was the one I found personally the hardest. Mm-hmm. But once you overcome that and you kind of find out your position in the organisation, the role you can do, the freedoms you do and don't have, it becomes quite an empowering situation. But it took me a while to understand that, if I'm brutally honest.
How long did you spend in that role?
So I was a station manager in various different guises for about 6.5, 7 years. I was station manager.
What was the biggest takeaways you took from that? Because I say it was the most challenging bit for you as you reflect, coming from watch to station.
You leave a watch, you're still the same person, but the watch will view you differently because of the colour of your shirt or what you wear on your shoulder. That took me a long time to come to terms with.
Okay.
You kind of look back and maybe I did that to other people as well. Maybe I've perpetuated that as much as been feeling the difficult end of it.
How have you tried to dispel that as you've now found yourself on the other side of the table, and now for one of the services it's sort of the pinnacle, I suppose?
Yep. I've stopped trying to put a front on. Actually, I am me, and I fulfil a role for the organisation, whether that's chief, assistant chief, station manager. I've just tried to be me. Okay. I'm still a person. People will think, oh my God, the chief's coming. Yeah. No, Callum's going to a station. Callum used to be on a station.
Absolutely.
I'm not a great fan of airs and graces. I don't like being called sir. I find it deeply uncomfortable.
Okay.
I'd much rather people just call me Callum. Yeah. But I understand other people might not be comfortable with that as well. It's horses.
There's a generational shift there as well, isn't there? Attracting new talent to the fire service can be quite a challenging thing because like certain services look at graduate programs. I know your service is recruiting at the moment. Mm-hmm. How are you attracting people in at recruitment level now?
There's loads of different problems with recruitment. Some of them are happy problems and some of them are difficult. So I think if we hark back to the old days, you'd do national adverts, national campaigns, and you'd attract thousands of people for a handful of jobs, and it really would be dead person's shoes. Yeah. And I think that worked for the service in certain ways but didn't in others. Mm-hmm. I think our communities have changed and shifted. I think realistically we've got an awful long way to travel to kind of make sure and promote ourselves to all of the community. I think there's certainly in Leicestershire our community is really diverse and our organisation isn't. Okay. And I think we've got a massive amount of work to do with positive action. Okay. And positive action often gets a bad press, is often misconstrued.
What is positive action for some people that are unfamiliar with it?
Positive action for me is to advertise ourselves to underrepresented groups, to let them understand what the job is, what the role entails.
Underrepresented within the services currently?
Within the services currently, yes. So certainly gender would be high on the scope. Black and ethnic minorities, really, really high percentages within Leicestershire, really low percentages within the organisation. We have to challenge ourselves. Why is that? But also, I really want to it's about making awareness and talking about the service and giving people opportunity to look and see what it's like up to the point of application. Where I am firmly of the agreement is the standard is the standard for all the right reasons. We need firefighters to be firefighters. Of course. We need to be able to respond to the emergency instance. Whilst it is a relatively small part of our role now, it's a crucial part of our role, and that's where people get hurt or people get saved. So people have to perform to the right standard. But actually, if people don't understand the fire and rescue service, and if people only see white middle-aged firefighters, they are going to perpetually think that it's only a job for white middle-aged firefighters. It's my job to break some of that down. I can't do that by myself.
I absolutely agree with you. I fear so much that we've been so in love with an old mindset of national campaign, posters here, posters there, that because of our own actions, fires and emergencies have, certainly fires, have become less prevalent. We're not out in the community as much. We're not given an opportunity to be celebrated by the work that we do. Deeply worried that people have fallen out of love with it. They've forgotten what it was because we've got such a USP as the fire service. You know, you know why you ring the ambulance, you know why you ring the police. Some people love them, some people hate them. But the fire service it's so unique. It has such deep roots and moral value, and it stands for something good. But if you can't open the doors, if you can't allow people to look inside and see who is in there, do you know what I mean? Who are these characters? Who are the people? Wow, that sounds interesting. That sounds fun. Because that's how you fell in love with it. You know, and if we don't find a new way to talk about that, and I don't see enough people doing it, hence the birth of the podcast, is I want people to fall in love with something that sometimes you feel like a bit of an alien. You know, you're in the community and you're talking about something you love, and if somebody else doesn't get it, you're like, you must not know what I'm on about. I want about this thing, right? The fire service, this thing. And they're like, no, don't know anything about it. You're like, you serious? No way. You know, it's such a great thing. So what have been the answers that have come out so far? You say you're looking for reasons that we're struggling to engage with those culture. Is it a one-way street, or is it, are we not interested, they're not interested? How is it working?
If I speak honestly, we've got a bit of growing up to do. We kind of say, we want to increase our equality and diversity. Come on in. Yeah. Well, they don't want to come on in, so we've got to change something to go to them and say that you don't have to come, but have a look and see. And certainly,
you've got to get down to that level, because someone was sitting mighty upon high. You can come in and look at you're welcome. And we're like,
for a day, we'll unlock the door. Come in for a day.
Okay, I'm busy. Do you know what I mean? In a world where we're so noisy, I see firefighters that love the job. It's more than just the financial side of it, but that can be a real challenge to helping people realise what we do.
And it's, forgive me, I'm a white middle-aged male. I'll go out and talk to anyone, but it might feel that I'm talking at them and that I'm a white male in a privileged position. You don't really want me. You're doing it because you need to tick boxes. That's where I can't break that barrier by myself. We've got some awesome advocates in the service that actually are really working hard, and my disappointment is that as an organisation we're not all working hard on that, and some people have very different opinions, which is fine. Get into 2020 really. The world is a very different place.
Be part of the solution, or get out of the way. Because this individual, is it perfect? No. The podcast, is it perfect? No, it's not. Does it come from a good place? We're trying to do a good thing. Okay, so let's learn and adapt as we move forward. And you've spoken about a few individuals in your service. I'm aware of the few in your service who are really trying to do a great thing. You just need to, like you said, remove and that's your role as a leader. You know, remove the barriers, give them support, give them the resources. It's not going to be perfect first time. Let's hope for 60% effectiveness, and let's work together to move from there. And I suppose I hear that it's a lot about culture there. How do you try and develop the right culture within your service? What systems do you have in place?
So I think EDI in our service is an area. Without dwelling on the past too much, we've suffered heavily from cuts, and we've suffered heavily from financial restraint. And that's probably one area that, in hindsight, I think I'd wish we'd done differently. I think we've let it slip off the agenda. It's not a conversation that happens around stations, headquarters. EDI doesn't crop up every now and again. We've got a couple of people now working their socks off to kind of bring it back onto the agenda, but it's not enough.
Okay.
So kind of breaking news, really. We've just agreed we're going to actually increase that establishment. We're going to put a secondment in there for a watch manager opportunity to get out in the organisation and bring that conversation back up. We thought we had to do something to stimulate a conversation in the organisation around Black Lives Matter. It's quite a divisive issue. I think, dare I say, the Black Lives Matter logo has been politicised. That wasn't the intent behind our stuff. It was around the inequalities that go on. We both write some articles from our perspective. We attended Black Lives Matter. I have to say, I was living in my own little bubble. I thought we'd come on as a society so much further than actually we have, and we haven't.
I have that sometimes. I consciously remove myself from society a little bit, because otherwise you can get caught up in the waves, you get caught up in the noise. But sometimes you then nurture and grow your own values, but you forget there's still a lot of people still struggling out there with things that you hoped and believed we'd overcome. So
I can write every policy, every procedure in the world. I can discipline for not adhering to it. That won't Forcing compliance won't work.
Stick. Yeah.
It's got to be a conversation, and ideally a conversation led by peers to peers rather than up and down.
Otherwise, it's just tell.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? It needs to be something we collaboratively move towards. Otherwise, like you say, I'm just telling you and you don't feel part of the solution.
Yep.
Be part of the solution, then we can own it together.
And I drive the conversation underground. You end up with pockets and outbreaks, and that's just not healthy for an organisation. So I'd much rather do the educate and talk about rather than the big stick. Don't get me wrong, as we've talked about earlier, there's the legal requirements that we are a fair and equal employer, and we won't tolerate racism, sexism, whatever protected characteristic it is.
We'd hope that's not just the case for the fire service. Do you know what I mean? We definitely, of course, have a legal obligation, but isn't it so sad that we know that that's not the case in all organisations?
Yep.
So we talk about fire safety, we talk about leading by example. We need to show that in our morals and values, not just what we do when we're on a fire engine out of fire. It has to be so within our culture doing that.
And I think we're getting better, but we're a little way off the pace with that. I don't think those conversations are happening. I'm really keen to get them conversations going. Even if people disagree with positive action, even if people disagree with Black Lives Matter, it's okay to disagree, but let's have the conversation and let's talk about it. Because ultimately, just because you feel that way doesn't mean it's right. Just because I feel a way doesn't mean it's right.
Yes.
But actually, there are people in the organisation that don't feel they're comfortable to have that conversation because they know the watch, the station, people have different views. That's really sad. That's heartbreaking in a way. We should all be able to come to work, and that passion we've talked about, that love of the job, everyone should be able to feel that. It shouldn't be based on your gender, the colour of your skin, your sexual orientation, how old you are, how young you are, if you've got a disability. That's totally and utterly irrelevant.
Yeah.
It should be, if you want to come to work and enjoy yourself. Work hard, play hard.
That's it, mate. So you're working through recruitment now, as I've sort of referenced a few times. How many people, because you've recruited 2 or 3 times in the past few years. I know a lot of UK services, it's quite cyclic, isn't it, in generations? But you are recruiting literally right now, I think.
Yeah, right now the recruitment opened...
Yesterday?
Yesterday.
Today?
Yeah, yesterday. Second day today.
How many people are you looking for, and what role? For anybody, because we have a lot of operational firefighters across the world, 32 something countries now, but for anybody that's listening that's a member of the public, because I know quite a few people recruiting, what is going to be expected of somebody joining a service, and how many people are you going for?
Right, so what's going to be expected? We want people who represent our community. So this is often one that's talked about and not universally liked. Some of the restrictions we put on the applications is that you need to have a Leicestershire or Rutland, our service area postcode. Okay. And that fundamentally is done for 2 reasons. One is we want our workforce to represent our community. So by keeping it to our community, we improve the diversity opportunities with that. And equally, we spoke about earlier, you'd often get 6,000 to 10,000 applicants for eight jobs. You still have to sift that down. So it's a way of controlling the number of applicants in the same way. People who are able to engage with the community, people who have a interest to help the community. We touched on it earlier, but it's the vast majority of an operational whole-time firefighter's role isn't operational now. It's about interacting and engaging with the community, delivering prevention or protection advice.
How do you assess for that?
Yeah, great question. I can't give you all the answers.
No, of course.
But obviously the way people interact in interviews, the way people conduct themselves, obviously we've got physical testing because, as we spoke about earlier, there is still the operational element. And whilst it's a small element, it's a crucial one. And we need to train and be ready for that all the time. You know, that is, we are an emergency service. There is
need to be a good communicator, like you said. It's not just what they say. For perhaps if somebody goes into your interview process, it's not what they say; it's how they say it. Because being able to communicate it is the art of prevention. And
so, without giving all of the secrets away, the interview is a real crucial phase. It's the one that's weighted the heaviest in all of the process. We're looking at how people communicate, both on a verbal and a body language way. We'll ask questions about how they've worked with people in the community across a broad range of things, such as equality, diversity, and inclusion, other stressful scenarios, talk about what you've done to help your community already, because you shouldn't be just coming to the fire service, but by joining that will help the community.
It's exactly what you said before.
You've already done it.
You've got to, was it the right why? Is this something you really want to do? Have you invested in it before? How have you tried to do it? Because it may not have been the fire service before, it may have been something else, whatever. Do you know, but has it been, is it you, or is it just something you're trying to do today because this opportunity's here? Get in the right people.
It's getting underneath that, and the ways of doing that, and the interviewer's skills in that are particularly key. It's not to challenge anyone or put any tripwires up, but actually we do want the best people for the job. We want people to come into our service that are going to take us on, involve us on. And actually, the way it is at the moment is we don't have a two-tier entry system. So the firefighters we recruit today are the chief of tomorrow, potentially.
Yeah.
So
you joined as a firefighter? Yeah.
We're not just looking for firefighters. We're looking for people who want to be firefighters, but who also may have the potential or the desire to progress as well. Because that's the next key of the recruitment challenge of absolutely, we can pull firefighters in, we can run recruitment campaigns. That's not the end of it. You then need to develop, empower, expose and experience your staff to managerial stuff to then hopefully get them to consider promotion further down the line, because the managerial skill set or the leadership skill set is actually key for the organisation.
Most definitely. I always say there's no such thing as bad teams, there's just bad leaders.
Yep.
How would you describe your leadership style?
Cool. I don't know. How would you describe my leadership style?
I've not particularly done a great deal of work with you. I don't know. Do you find yourself as more of a dictator, or do you work more closely with your team? Do you lead by example? Are you a great communicator? Where do you believe your strength lies? Do you have great empathy? What is your style?
I think it changes. And I think certainly I spent most of my career in Cambridgeshire. I think people who are in Cambridgeshire who are listening would say there's definitely been times and phases in my development where I was very dictatorial, where I did use the big stick. Some of it was warranted, some of it on reflection. I wish to God I'd tried a different way.
Yep.
And it's all about that learning, and it's okay to get stuff wrong as long as you learn from it. It's when you keep getting stuff wrong because you keep doing the same thing that you've probably reached a problem. I would like to think I'm a personable communicator. What I wouldn't say, and I can hear my voice in the headset now, is actually I do at times sound a bit like a Cockney greengrocer.
Okay. Is that a bad thing?
Not if you're a Cockney greengrocer.
No, of course not.
When you hear your own voice, sometimes it's a little bit off-putting, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I'd like to think I'm a personal communicator. I'd like to think people can talk to me, even if it's a bad message or bad news. Still talk to me about it, and we'll try and find a way through it.
So flexing your style ultimately is saying that. Because I totally agree with you. I work as an incident commander on jobs when I'm in it, but that is where perhaps a dictatorship belongs. Do you know what I mean? You need to be able to stand and point. You need to be able to project yourself and have that self-confidence and that command presence, as it were. Yeah. But certainly for me, for anybody that's seen any of the visuals or things like that, I'm quite a big person, and at a period of time in my life, I misused that, and I would have a very physical presence within a room, and trying to adapt that to be able to connect with people and soften yourself is a real skill set, and it's taken me some wonderful coaches to be able to make that adaptation. What leadership development do you do for people? We spoke about people coming at the ground level and growing them up.
Yep.
Development is something that's key. How do you develop your staff?
I came from an organisation that actually invested really heavily in developing leaders for the future, for the now and the future. Okay. So the development that I've been on, I'm really privileged to have been on a number of opportunities. I've had internal and external coaching, leadership management development programs. I'm currently doing the executive leadership program now, which is a brigade manager's kind of leadership of organisations. So really privileged. I think our provision within Leicestershire at the moment isn't where we'd like it to be. Okay. Just brought on an awesome addition to our senior management team who's got a really good background in learning and development, organisational development. For exactly one of those person's priorities is to really let's crack on and get the development, because we know we've got recruitment coming down the line. Probably for the next 5 years, I would imagine we're going to recruit every year for the next 5 years.
Wow, really?
And obviously that's...
Which will give a lot of people a lot of optimism listening.
Yeah. I mean, we'll talk about numbers, because I'm conscious you asked me a question and I haven't answered it about numbers, but I will come on to that. It's also about getting people into the organisation, but getting people ready to progress up into the organisation. That's kind of the challenge. And I think in years gone by or decades gone by, maybe we've relied on experience and learning from others to then develop yourselves.
Certainly, so like mentorship or like coaching or having a sponsor, sometimes people maybe describe it as,
Or you've been to 20 house fires, you've worn BA 20 times, you're an experienced BA wearer. I don't subscribe to that rubbish, if I'm brutally honest.
I see.
It's a possession.
People relate time to knowledge or experience, but we know people in their 50s, 60s, 70s who have worked hard all their life, but they never quite got it, and they've struggled forever for lots of different reasons, and that's not how we develop necessarily.
So a phrase I use commonly is time served doesn't equal experience. Experience equals experience. You can get that in 1 day or 1 minute, or you can do 10 years at a really quiet station and never wear BA operationally. Who's the more experienced?
And that reassures me as a UK firefighter, hearing more and more chiefs talk about that, because it can be quite dangerous and scary if that's not appreciated as we look at different people's skill sets.
And the one that really gets my goat is, you've got to do 4 years in the back of a pump before you even consider promotion. No, when you're ready for promotion, go for promotion. You can get the skills to do. You might even already have the skills to do it, coming from a diverse background, diverse experience that we talked about. Yes, there's a bit about you do need some credibility, but you can get that in. You don't get that in time. You get that in being credible.
I can teach you that. It's a bit like a sports team. I always say, if you've got somebody that's really, really hungry and really interested, they haven't got to be the fittest. They haven't got to be the best. If they've got a desire to grow, you want that versus the person, to use your analogy, like that walks in. I've got the qualifications. I've been on station for 10 years, and you're like, yeah, but you're not receptive of feedback. You're not hungry to grow. You're not interested. I don't feel your passion. Doesn't matter, but it does matter though. It really does matter.
And the bit that really resonates with me as well, I've been on the course, I'm ready. No, the course gives you the skills. What you need to do is take the skills and look at how you use them, play with them a little bit, get things right, get things wrong.
We've given you these tools. Show me what we've done with them. I've got the tools.
Yeah, I've got the ticket. Yeah, that box is ticked. Move on.
You spoke about external development. Is this something you've sought support, coaching, qualifications? Because if that is correct, I'd love to hear what you say about it. I'm big for this is your personal development.
Yep.
You may not be in the same service, career, anything in all your life, but it's in your best interest to develop yourself. Just because there's nothing out there right now, you could do something.
So my development say is a rich and diverse path. If we talk about coaches and mentors, I actually had a really good mentor in my old service who was very much, this is what I did and this is the results it had. You do what you want with it. That was really useful for me.
Was that a formal thing, or was this somebody you sought out yourself? Or
no, I sought it out myself and approached it. I'd made a mistake. I'd gone to see the assistant chief at the time, and he probably quite rightly put me right against my errors.
Yeah.
So I said, well, look, clearly I'm not meeting your expectations, or I'm disaligned with you. Is there any chance we can spend a bit of time together talking about how you see the world, etc.? And it worked into a really, really good and helpful relationship. Now, he didn't tell me what to do and solve all my problems for me. That's not what coaching's about.
Yeah.
But what it did do is it enabled me to kind of gauge his opinion or perspective on the same thing, which was different from mine.
Yeah.
Really useful.
If you can swallow it as well and still go back and take more. Some people hate the message, so they sack off the messenger. Do you know what I mean? But if they did tell you something that was valuable to you, just didn't like hearing it, and the truth is often that way, then if you can take that and go, oh, that one's not, wait, before you go, that hurt, but please can we speak again at some point, because there's going to be, whereas some people will just go, I'm not doing that again.
I've been telling off. I'm not going there again.
And that's it. That takes a lot. That takes a lot though of personal resolve. But I suppose you'd had a few setbacks already. Yeah. So how much do you encourage your staff to seek those mentors? Because it's easy to assign somebody, but they've got to work together.
So I've got a couple of qualifications in coaching and mentoring, and to be perfectly honest, one was it's an ILM level 5 in coaching.
Again, did you seek that yourself, or
that was assisted through the organisation? So there was a group of us looking for development. And the organisation listened and provided, which was really good.
Wonderful.
The qualification was absolutely rubbish. It taught me nothing. But what it did do was kind of said that formal qualification is nothing. We need actually a coach to talk to us about coaching.
Yes.
So we got another individual in for I think it was either half a day or a day, and I learned so much more in that day than I did in the 2 weeks doing this course and learning how to pass an exam. So I'm a real fan of coaching, and people will call it, oh, you've got a sponsor, you got this, you got that. It's not what coaching's about, but it does open your mind to the fact that other people are differently, and you could do things differently to what you do. That's the key to development.
And a good coach or sponsor or mentor, like you say, they're very rarely ever, in my experience, assigned to somebody. It echoes back to the conversation we have about luck. When somebody goes, oh, look, you've got this. No, I was seeking it. I was asking questions. Then I had one, then two, then I had 4 conversations with the person. I said, "Is it okay if I send you an email? Shy kids don't get sweets." And you go, "Can it okay if I contact you from time to time and ask you this?" Sure. And then all of a sudden, it develops over 6 months, and you might be having a weekly phone call, and people go, "That's not fair. That's special treatment." No, I've gone with no expectation, and I've sincerely asked for some help. They could have said no.
Yep.
Yeah, they've no moral or professional obligation to do that for me, but I had to keep going and putting myself out there with the risk of being embarrassed or shut down.
Yep.
You've got to seek that.
And with coaching, we could set a formal coaching structure up tomorrow in the organisation, but it won't work because it's all about the connections and the individuals. So certainly some experiences from my previous service was the person with the highest rank at the time would be the most popular coach, because people saw it as the sponsoring. As people kind of got their head around coaching a little bit, it very quickly changed. It had to be the personal connection.
Yeah.
The other thing I would suggest as well that I've done, I got a coach external to the fire service, because the fire service is quite commonly entrenched in its views. So a different perspective is
you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. You know, you're talking to everybody else that's doing the same thing you're doing, going, I can't get one. And someone else comes in from an external company, especially now because you operate very much like a business. And I don't say that in a horrible way, but there's lots of metrics that need to be hit. So sometimes when we consult, as we call it now, or coaching from an external source, and they go, "You're not doing this," and we go, "Sorry, we were just a bunch of firefighters. We weren't sure."
Yeah.
And then getting that external coaching. So you've invested in external coaches before.
Yes, really lucky.
Do you work with one now? Obviously, we don't need to know who it is. Do you? That's wonderful.
That'll
blow people's minds. Some people that have always banged their head against the wall and never perhaps invested in that, because often we have to pay for these services. People forget it's an investment in yourself, though, versus a £50, £60 Saturday night, spending an hour with somebody that could give you that one nugget, that one sentence where you go, oh, wow, there it is. And then it opens up a whole new world for you.
Or even just a different perspective or different lens to look through. I've done that again, haven't I?
Yeah.
So, I'm amazed that people don't think that I do that sometimes, because actually, just because you're a chief, you haven't got all the answers. You haven't got...
No, I don't say because you're a chief. I think there'll be deputies and groups and areas and stations who themselves don't. I look at a coach as a performance enhancer.
Yeah.
It's somebody that has invested in you. It's even better if they're fully external from whatever it is you do, because they've no emotional connection to it. They've no alter ego, no alternate
and
motives.
They haven't got an agenda in it either.
No agenda. Absolutely. Crucial part of it. So looking ahead now, what sort of projects, you've spoken about the learning development aspect of it, what big projects are you looking ahead towards? Let's assume the lay of the land stays as it is. What things have you got looking forward towards in the next sort of 6 months for your service?
Like most services, we've got quite a large program of projects running at the moment. There's always irons in the fire that are coming out soon. I think the next big one for us will be Oracle. So it's a new learning management system. Loads of management buzzwords in that sense. And basically, our training record system is, in my view, archaic, unuser friendly, and it puts a burden on the service to physically do those records, which are essential for many legal reasons.
Of course.
So the new system we've got is much more user interactive. It's user friendly. It's built to help the user undertake and record training rather than something you have to do. That one's quite exciting. It allows the opportunity for multimedia to come into our training packages, can also link to virtual reality, immersive reality, which is an area we're kind of forging ahead with.
Yes.
The recruitment campaign obviously is going on. We've got loads of developments in organisational development coming online really soon. I won't lie, money is always in the background. We're not a rich fire and rescue service.
No.
Rishi Sunak's announcements yesterday, I haven't fully looked at the implications for us. It should mean we're okay for the next year or so. My big drive, my big strategic vision, my big grand plan, as it were, is to stop, catch a breath, and sort all of our processes and policies out. We've got loads of archaic dead wood in our organisation, in my organisation, that I think we can streamline and get rid of a load and make it smoother and user interactive. That then frees up our capacity, our time for the organisation moving forward. I'm not even going to call them big things, because they're not big things, but they're big symbolic things. I want to put some pride back into the service. I want to put some positivity back in the service, but we also need to be productive.
Yes.
So we've put the station names back on fire engines. It's what staff wanted. It's not a big thing.
Fantastic.
But actually it's something that gives some ownership, bit of pride back.
Most definitely.
Subject to fire authority approval in December, badges are going back onto uniforms, back onto fire engines, to give that
So a number of services
identity.
lost theirs, but it's wonderful to hear you're bringing yours back, because I think some people see that as a cost that they're not willing to try and rake back, but you see it as more than that.
I see that as an investment in my staff. My staff want to be associated with this organisation.
Give us something to be proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the old pat your chest on the badge.
100%.
But you know what? It works, because people want to be associated with the organisation, so let them.
Yes.
The roll-off from that as well is we're in advanced talks with Hoodies for Heroes, so that if
We've
people
had
want
them on the podcast. Phil
so
Maynard.
if people want to purchase that, we've had a slight delay because we need to get the badge amended slightly, but it's very firmly on the agenda.
That's wonderful, that is. That will really allow people to take pride in their service. I know many services across the UK, even some of these Midlands ambulance the ambulance services have have taken that on board as well. It's great to see a charitable organisation like that and that you're so accepting of the work they're doing.
Yeah. And it feeds back to the staff as well. Don't get me wrong, it helps the Firefighters Charity, an immense organisation that's on the ropes like a lot of charities at the moment. Everything we can do to help them, I'm a massive supporter of. But equally, if people want to wear the badge outside of work, I'm not going to stop them because I'm proud of that badge too. I'll wear my hoodie outside of work.
Yeah.
As long as you're not an idiot in the pub or whatever, then you...
But that comes back to trust, doesn't it? And we hope if people do that in any service across the world, then let's identify them as soon as possible because they're not the people that we want in. It's great to hear the projects that you've got going on. I mean, you guys have had some incredible operational challenges. You've had floods, helicopter crashes and stuff like that. But despite all that, you seem immensely confident with your staff's operational capability. And to hear you talking, I mean, all we've really spoken about there is, it's been learning and development. You've spoke about recruitment. You've spoke about getting in leadership mentors and leadership apprenticeships. So the big focus feels like it's finally back on the people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we've had some, and I wasn't here for any of those incidents, so I'm not trying to steal the glory in myself any way, shape or form. We respond operationally really, really well.
There seems to be the case.
The staff are confident, they've got the ability, they've got the kit. We need to maintain that, of course. And we should never take the focus off of that. But it means we can focus on all the other stuff. And I use the positive pride, productivity. That's kind of the drive for the service.
Yeah.
Catchy, the power of three and all begin with B and all of that sort of stuff. But actually that's what I'm quite care about. I think I came into the organisation about 18 months, 20 months ago on the back of the inspectorate. The inspectorate report, I don't contest the report. I don't fight against the report. It was what it was. I didn't recognise what I saw in the organisation to what the report said.
Okay.
But that's a learning opportunity for us. We haven't sold ourselves right then. It's not that we don't do it. It's that we haven't sold ourselves.
Yeah.
And there was a real downer on the organisation. It felt like we've had a kick in. We were licking our wounds and we were in a bad place. Justifiably, maybe. Nothing's going to change unless we change that.
Yeah, so it has to start with us.
So we've got to start building that positivity back in. We're a bloody good fire and rescue service.
Yeah.
Just need to start believing it ourselves, maybe.
It's wonderful to hear that. Callum, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate you taking the time and stay safe out there, all right?
You're welcome. You too.
Take care. Well, there we have it, folks. Callum Fain, Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service Chief Fire Officer. This is a really unique position where we are interviewing a Chief Fire Officer whose service is recruiting right now. Their recruitment is open and it closes on the 6th of December. So at time of producing this podcast gives you about a week, 6 or 7 days. Head over to leics-fire.gov.uk. You can get into their recruitment right now. I hope you've taken some really good nuggets away from that one. Some real knowledge bombs about how to apply, what they're looking for, what experience you should be thinking about, and how it is what you have done. What difference have you made to your community, and how can it help the fire service with their goal of safer people, safer places? Once again, no matter where you're listening, all across the world, I hope you've taken some inspiration from today. Callum's story is unique, as well as every guest of the Firefighters Podcast. Know that no matter who you are, where you're from, you can support your emergency services everywhere, all over the world. But no matter if you've got ambitions to be in the emergency services or not, please look after each other. Please stay safe. Please be respectful. Please be patient with the people in your life. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay hungry. We hope you took some motivation from this. We hope you're feeling good. We hope this has empowered you as you move through your week and gives you a little bit of optimism to look at things a little bit differently. We will no doubt see you next time. We thank you for taking the time to listen in with us. We do not take this time lightly, and we look forward to seeing you again on the Firefighters Podcast.